From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, this is Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Riley Smith. In today's show, Mark discusses the USDA's meat production and price forecast. I visit with Practical Farmers of Iowa board member Tim Youngquist, and special correspondent Russ Parker visits with Natalie Breakfield of New Leaf Symbiotics. Now here are your hosts, Mark Magnuson and Dustin Huffman.
Iowa Ag Matters, and Dustin, as we think about where we are at the start of 2026, we've been talking about it a lot, but meeting season is officially kicking off with Iowa Pork Congress. I'm going to be there tomorrow and looking forward to those discussions with, of course, the national groups, but also the Iowa Pork Producers Association. Always interesting to see, just how big the pork industry here is in the state of Iowa when it's all under one roof and everybody's coming together for that great event.
Yeah, it's always a good time out there and always a lot to learn, and always gets us a great idea of what the policy situations are going to be for the coming year as well. Some of the things that they're thinking about. And of course, we got a lot to talk about in the pork industry. I mean, the markets have been decent lately, but we also have, pressure from, worrying about if there's ever a disease outbreak. Of course, we haven't talked about African swine fever for a while, but I'm not trying to jinx us either. But because of the work that's been done and the discussions that's been had, has gone a long way into preventing that from coming onto our shores. And so to hear what's going on, what's new in the industry, what kind of things they're thinking about, it's always a good time to get some education on that front as well.
And to your point, it's not like those diseases go away. It's just the fact that there's so much work going on behind the scenes to help keep, a disease like African swine fever from the United States. I mean, we hear stories all the time from that disease ravaging parts of Europe and different countries, even in like the Caribbean, for example. So, I mean, it's definitely out there. It's definitely something that people are staying diligent about. Not necessarily something that you always see in the front in the news, which is actually a good thing. It's a situation of no news is good news, but it's also something that at an event like this, we can find all those things that are being done to help mitigate those problems if they are occurring in different places. And then, of course, trying to prevent it from coming into the United States. And that's something I'm going to be talking about with Joe Camp of Comstock here later when we get into the livestock on the other side with the beef side, of course, as the New World screwworm still causing problems in Mexico. We now have the New World screwworm in a Mexican border state to the United States. And it is, starting to ramp up, it seems like, in terms of the, severity of that issue because of how close it is to the U.S.
Yeah, that it is. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And of course, that's got to ramp up some of the work that's being done also to try to get this contained. Let's go ahead and jump into the markets then. Joe Camp of Comstock talking with Mark Magnuson here about the grains and what they're doing so far on this Tuesday.
Joined today by Joe Camp of Comstock for the opening market report. Joe, what's happening with the trade in the grains after our long weekend and no trade yesterday?
So far, relatively calm to start out this holiday week. We had on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Monday, some pre-opened markets that were expressing worry about the weekend developments regarding new tariffs threatened against European countries based on this goal of President Trump to purchase Greenland. So new charges against Europe may be raised here by June 1st if there's not a deal reached. The unknown about what's next on that front has the stock futures sharply lower. You've got risk premium flowing further into the metals, so new highs once more for gold and silver. You have that overall market risk, again, largely being shrugged off for now by the grains. We know that Europe is a big trading partner for agricultural goods. You look at corn, a top buyer as of late having been Spain. That's a big deal. But what else are we going to have pop up is one of the unknowns that has everybody a bit on edge to open up the week. But again, for now, quietly mixed are the grain futures.
Joe, coming out of this 3-day weekend, no trading yesterday, what are you looking at as the big stories to watch on the grain side this week and I guess moving forward in January?
Well, certainly it starts with tariffs, and not only that weekend news about Europe, but tariffs against everyone else, China included, as it relates to the Supreme Court's pending decision on President Trump's reciprocal tariff authority. The last 2 weeks have had these Supreme Court opinion days where it was thought possible and even likely that we would have rulings announced on those tariffs being struck down or not, including the nature of reciprocal tariff refunds and whether or not those will be required and what that means for the economy. The possibility for those tariffs to be struck down then leaves a whole host of policy follow-up where the administration would likely put those on under different statutory authorities, but it's another bit of tariff turmoil that the market for now doesn't necessarily love. Again, with the stock market the lower like it is and the edge lower on grains after we actually finished last week on firmer footing for grain futures, of course, to follow up that big Monday crop report route that we had. Still left corn and soybeans down for the week, but again, a much better finish than the way it looked on Monday and Tuesday. So this week, a lot of it having to do with tariffs and this next possible decision day for the Supreme Court. And then beyond that, it's back to monitoring the usual ongoings of especially demand. Last week's crop report had all of the focus back on supply and just how big these last crops were. Well, now maybe we can shift some attention back to how are we using these crops. We've been really rather impressed by corn usage, record exports, recently record ethanol production. For soybeans, phenomenal processing demand. Even last week, some movement on biofuel policy that helped spike the soy oil futures. But then still the standing question of soybean exports and what China continues to buy or not. They were believed to have completed their 12 million metric tons of purchase promises, and now they could very well shift a lot of that demand down to South America as another big story. Of course, we're watching the Brazilian harvest kicking off and filling that trade pipeline with soybeans.
Every farmer knows a strong season starts long before the planter rolls. At Landis, our agronomists are here to help you choose the right seed for your fields and protect it with Acre Edge seed treatments that give your crop a stronger, healthier start. And with flexible financing options, it's easier than ever to plan ahead, manage cash flow, and capture early season savings. Talk with your local Landis agronomist today and plant with confidence.
Back on Iowa Ag Matters as we get going into 2026. Of course, a lot of outlooks as to what we're going to be seeing. And of course, here is our meat production forecast coming from the USDA. Mark Magnuson has more for us right now.
USDA recently issued its first projections this year for meat production and prices. For the most part, increased production and price forecasts for the prior month are on display in the USDA January Meat Outlook. USDA World Agricultural Outlook Board Chair Mark Jekanowski says there are some exceptions.
Tight supplies that are kind of dominating the market for cattle and beef. So year over year, beef production expected to be down 260 million pounds.
That is despite month-over-month production increases forecasted for beef in 2025 and 26. Jekanowski says that changes were minimal for global meat trade.
In terms of global meat trade, most of the changes this month were relatively minor. Pork exports for 2026, we raised 65 million pounds this month. Year over year, they would be up about 123 million pounds.
He expands on the numbers for beef production and steer prices.
For 2025, we raised our beef production forecast by 50 million pounds, just reflecting continued higher cattle weights, which are more than offsetting lower placements. And we expect those higher weights to carry into the current calendar year, into 2026, more than offsetting lower placements this year, tighter supplies. And with that, for 2026, we raised our beef production forecast by 10 million pounds. But still, it's tight supplies supplies that are kind of dominating the market. Beef production expected to be down 260 million pounds, which is providing some support. Cattle and beef prices. We raised our steer price forecast for 2026 by 75 cents per hundredweight, now at $235.75 per hundredweight. That would be up $11.38 from last year, from 2025, and we're expecting that price strength to continue throughout the year.
For more on this story, you can visit our website at iowaagnet.com.
Hi, my name is Ethan Smith, and I've been a certified crop advisor in Iowa for about 6 years. The Iowa CCA program is valuable to me because it helps keep me informed on new topics and research around the industry, including soils, insects, diseases, and much more. It's also a great way to network with others around the state and beyond. Iowa is known for its crops, and that's why we're here. To learn more about becoming a certified crop advisor, visit iowacca.org.
Well, Mark, a lot of information there coming from the United States Department of Agriculture and that meat forecast. But when you look back on it now, any key takeaways from your standpoint on that?
Yeah, Dustin, it's kind of a delicate balancing act right now because we know beef prices in the grocery store are high. They're hitting historic levels, even for things like ground beef, hamburger. And in the store, we can see that direct correlation right now with why that's happening. We talked about it to start the show. The border between the United States and Mexico is closed for one thing. That's keeping back a lot of the feeder cattle from coming across the border that we can feed. Now, at the same time, we are feeding our cattle here that we have in the United States to heavier weights, but that supply is just so limited right now that we don't really have a lot of options in terms of trying to tamp that price down. And from the producer standpoint, they're not rebuilding the herd right now because they're getting those high prices. So it's just kind of a long-term thing that needs to have several different factors come together in order to make the price come down in the grocery store. But it is, pretty evident exactly what's happening to cause those prices to be high.
All right. Well, definitely some interesting information there. And it is kind of a catch-22 that these producers are in right now, especially when it comes to beef production. More Iowa Ag Matters coming up in a moment.
Your local radio station brings you the local news you depend on. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network complements that with ag news, weather, and market updates tailored for Iowa's farmers. Together, we deliver the best of both worlds, local connection and industry expertise. It's all to keep you connected with the heartbeat of the heartland. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, connecting rural Iowa with the news that matters to you.
Time to run down those cash corn and soybean bids here on Iowa Ag Matters on this Tuesday. I'm Dustin Huffman. Not seeing too much change, but a few elevators are beginning to improve their corn and soybean basis bids. Let's take a look at where they're pricing today. Starting at ADM Burlington, they're 3 cents under on corn, $4.19. Soybeans a dime under at $10.46. Cargill and Eddyville, 16 cents under on corn, cash bid $4.06. New Co-op Algona, 35 cents under on corn, $3.87. Soybeans 75 cents under, cash price $9.81. Ag State Sheldon, 23 cents under on corn, $3.99. Soybeans 85 cents under, $9.71. Ag State Alta, 40 cents under on corn, $3.82. Soybeans 75 cents under at $9.81. Cargill Cedar Rapids, 15 cents under on corn, cash bid $4.07. Soybeans 30 cents under with a cash price of $10.26. Five Star Co-op Nashua, 24 cents under on corn, $3.98. Soybeans 55 cents under at $10.01. Lincoln Way Energy Nevada, 18 cents under on corn, cash bid $4.04. ADM Des Moines, 35 cents under on soybeans, the cash price there $10.21. New Co-op Red Oak, 33 cents under on corn, $3.89. Soybeans 75 cents under, $9.81. Mid-Iowa Cooperative Green Mountain, 40 cents under on corn, $3.82 for the cash bid. Soybeans 75 cents under, $9.81. New Co-op Sheraton, 38 cents under on corn, $3.84. Soybeans 75 cents under at $9.81. Walk-On Feed Ranch, 41 cents under on corn, $3.81. Soybeans 76 cents under, they're at $9.80. New Co-op Glidden, 32 cents under on corn, $3.90. Soybeans 75 cents under, the cash bid there $9.81. Innovative Ag Services Farley, 39 cents under on corn with a cash bid of $3.83. Soybeans 69 cents under at $9.87. And Cargill and Muscatine today, their river is closed for the season. Deliveries are going to resume the week of March 23rd. Cash corn and soybean bids are subject to change without notice. Always check with your local elevator when making sales to obtain the most recent price. That's been a check of your cash corn and soybean bids here on Iowa Ag Matters. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this message.
Stay informed with the closing market report from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, your essential summary of the day's market activities and their impact on the agricultural economy. Join us for timely updates and expert commentary on commodity prices and market trends with trusted ag market analysts from around the Midwest. Tune in every Monday through Friday on your local Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network affiliate for your daily market recap and insights to stay ahead in the ag economy.
Back on Iowa Ag Matters here on a Tuesday. Of course, markets reopening, as we've been hearing. Grain's a little bit down to start the day. We're going to keep following along with that. But right now, Russ Parker is talking with the folks at New Leaf Symbiotics.
So we are at the New Leaf Symbiotics booth. So probably not a household name, but certainly one that we want more people to know about. So tell us a little bit about New Leaf, maybe the history of the company, how you got started, and then we can talk about some of the things that you bring to the market.
Okay, yeah. So New Leaf, we're, again, a biologicals company. We work on these pink bacteria. They're called PPFMs. So if you look and see our branding, you see a lot of pink. The PPFM stands for pink pigmented, so they're pink. Facultative methylotrophs means they can eat a waste product as the plant's growing. So these are bacteria that colonize the plant from early stages and stay with the plant all season long. And so our company got started to basically make solutions out of these really interesting and exciting, and it has a lot of really cool science behind it, these exciting bacteria, and make products that would help a farmer really grow more food and have a return on their farm and provide benefit for the whole system.
So let's talk a little bit about application. So if I'm an Iowa farmer, talk to me a little bit about how you're going to approach them from a communications perspective.
So application to get into your field. So we often go in on a planter box. So it's very easy to use. We go in right with the normal planting process. So this bacteria is a powder. And so just in their normal planting process, you put your seed in the planter, you have your seed lubricant, you add some of this powder in with it, our bacterial powder, and it just goes right out in the field with everything else. So then that's there right from the beginning, right from the planting time, colonizes the whole plant because these are bacteria that are found normally with the plant, and you get this protection all season long.
Okay, so kind of what's the process in terms of when are they going to be thinking about this? Are there any kind of indicators that you guys use that would say, hey, this would be a really good idea for you to use our product? Can we talk about that?
Yeah, so a farmer knows what's on his own land, right? Like they know what they have, and so what are their pressures? So if you have a lot of insect pressure, we have a product for that. It's called TS201. It's a bioinsecticide. It's EPA registered. And it was originally launched for corn rootworm, which is a very sporadic pest. But as we've learned a lot more about how it works, we've been able to expand that label to a lot of other pests. And so that's something that we have actively been working on. So one of the most exciting pieces of that is that if you're a soy farmer, we've got now a product that could work against stink bug. So, and again, it's that TS201. We're also launching this year another EPA registered product. It's a biofungicide. It's called TS601, and it has activity against a whole lot of fungal pathogens. So if you have either one of those kind of situations on your farm and you think you might have that, these are products that could provide you a lot of benefit. Put it on early, last throughout the season, and you can have control all season long.
Okay, fascinating. And this whole area of biologicals, at least for me personally, has just been, it's like a whole new opportunity for farmers to think about. So if a farmer wants to get a little bit more information, do some exploring, where's a good place for them to start?
Yeah, they should go to our website, so newleafsym.com. So it's NEWLEAFSYM.com. And so they can get a lot of information there. When you get there, you can check out our Pink Performance Tour. So it's videos were made with farmers that were actually using our products this year, and a lot of variety of crops against a variety of different locations. And so you can hear straight from a farmer's mouth, like what their experience was using our products.
Well, Natalie, thank you so much for your time. I'm with Natalie Breakfield. We're at the New Leaf Symbiotics booth at Trade Talk in Kansas City at NAFB. I'm Russ Parker reporting for the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.
In rural Iowa, we know you're sold on your local radio station. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network partners with local Iowa stations to deliver the latest in agriculture news, including grain elevator prices, market reports, and ag policy news. Trusted local voices, trusted ag content. This message is brought to you by your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters.
Well, Dustin, it was not too long ago, and you can go back and find it on our website. I wrote a story. We write our daily stories, of course, for the website and record those for the radio. And it was concerning extremely cold temperatures and that extra care that you need to have for your cattle and those tips and tricks, in terms of keeping your cattle somewhat comfortable during those very difficult times of cold weather. And when I wrote that story, it was actually one of those days when it was really warm. But since then, we've had some very cold days, and it is interesting the things that go into caring for your cattle during those very cold times. For example, cattle, they don't like the wind even more than the cold or if it's snowing. So a windbreak can be a very big help to those animals out, when they're out in the open on days that are just extremely bitter cold. Another factor, of course, is to make sure that they have access to fresh, clean water. And that's going to keep them obviously a lot better off during that cold temperature snap. And then, of course, the other factor is when it comes to feed, it's not just during the event, it's the lead up to that very cold to make sure that they have a little bit of condition to the animal to help them battle through that cold.
Yeah, that's true. And this goes for a lot more than just cattle. All the animals have to make sure that you've got adequate protection for them, adequate water access. People don't realize how crucial water is, especially when it's this cold. People think that, it's not that hot. But no, you can dehydrate just as fast out here in the cold as you would under some of the heat. And so you've got to make sure that you've got everything that you need for those animals. More Iowa Ag Matters in just a moment. Hi, this is Dustin Huffman, Content Director at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, inviting you to the 2026 Iowa Pork Congress, January 21st and 22nd in Des Moines. This is the pork industry's largest winter gathering, bringing together thousands of pork producers and industry professionals from across the Midwest and beyond. Explore 200-plus exhibitors, gain insights from industry-leading speakers, and connect with the people shaping the future of pork production. Don't miss 2 days of education, innovation, and networking at the Iowa Event Center. Register today at iowaporkcongress.org. That's iowaporkcongress.org.
This is the Midday Market Update on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Mark Magnuson, joined in midday by John Heinberg of Total Farm Marketing. John, what's happening with the trade in the grains?
Well, grain markets are mixed for the most part today. Starting to see a little bit of strength show up in that soybean market here in the last half hour or so. First off, let's go to that wheat market. That's kind of been the laggard today. 6 cents lower on the Chicago contracts, 3 cents on the KC, and a couple pennies lower on the spring wheat. Just see some pretty good wheat tender activity or trade activity in the export market over the 3-day holiday. Most of that wheat is coming from other regions or Argentina, but with that type of trade, it was significantly lower than the market was anticipating. I think that's some of the reason we're seeing some profit taking and some selling off in that wheat market. That's been limiting the corn market, I think, for the most part today, but as we're kind of moving into the afternoon side of the day here, we're starting to see at least a little bit of firmness coming off that corn market. Good export inspections again. We continue to need to see strong numbers there, as obviously we got a pretty big pile of corn to work through. Now on the soybean side, it was two-sided, mostly negative most of the morning, but here in the last half hour, like I said, seeing some buying coming into that soybean market as well. We got March back above 1060, the May contract over 1070. We saw that China did hit their 12 million metric ton purchase target here over the last week. Now the question is, do they go after that 25 million metric ton target that was supposed to be out there for the end of the
marketing season. So we'll see if that Chinese business continues. So again, but at least a little bit of strength as soybean meal and both beans kind of turn back to positive territory here on the session today.
What's happening on the livestock side of the trade?
Well, cattle market's been mostly firmer from the get-go today. Started off fairly quiet. Now we're trading about $1 higher across the board. Cash trade last week, it's around that 232.5 area. So the market in February is just kind of holding around that 232 and change level. But we're seeing at least a little bit of support in those longer months. We got a window here. We got some shortness in cattle. Obviously, the cold weather forecasts that are out there for the upper Midwest could be some of the factor pushing the market a little bit higher here today. And then we're seeing some decent retail value trade as well this morning. So with that, maybe we're getting a little bit of premium back after a pretty rough day on Friday, but still like the way that market did, at least the live cattle market, come off some of those lows on Friday. Same thing in the feeder market. Again, cash market continues to stay strong. The index is well above the feeder board right now with a 370 feeder cattle index in January at 363. So that may be bringing some support in.
John, what's the best way for our listeners to get in touch for more marketing information?
Sure, love to talk with them anytime. Give me a call, 800-334-9779. Shoot me an email at john.heinberg@totalfarmmarketing.com. And don't forget our website, totalfarmmarketing.com.
Start your weekend with insight and inspiration on Weekend Ag Matters from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Every week we bring you an in-depth look at the top ag stories with a recap of the week's biggest headlines. Join us for long-format interviews with industry leaders and policymakers, giving you insights you won't hear anywhere else. And don't miss our faith-based segment with Russ Parker, Food for Thought, offering a perspective that helps bring clarity and focus to our lives. Make Weekend Ag Matters part of your weekend routine. Tune in every weekend on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.
March corn down 1 1/4 at 423.5. March soybeans up 2.5 at 1060 1/4. March soybean meal up 250 at 292.50. March soybean oil up 40 cents at 53.01. On the Merc, February live cattle up 25 cents at 232.40. March feeder cattle up 98 cents at 357.43. February lean hogs unchanged at 88.28. That was a check of the midday markets on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Mark Magnuson. Time now for our discussion to continue with Joe Camp of Comstock about the livestock side of the markets. Joe, what's happening with the trade for cattle and hogs here on Tuesday after the day off yesterday from trading?
We've got a tentative recovery early for cattle, but tentative because the way things have been trading, volatility reigns supreme, and we could very well flip back weaker like the way we finished last week with sharp losses because of news reports of screwworm cases popping up in Mexico, and not just in Mexico, but in a Mexican border state. So getting closer and closer to the U.S. We even had the Texas Ag Commissioner come out and basically say it's not a matter of when or if, but when the screwworm may make its way into the U.S. And so the market's weighing not only just the headline shock of speculators wanting to get out and run for cover, but also this dynamic of, well, maybe the border could still reopen anyway under these new screwworm inspection protocols to get that flow of feeder cattle coming back into the market. So just a touch mixed for now on these cattle futures, waiting for fresh news on the Mexican border and screwworm, and now also waiting for the end of the week. We'll have the next big cattle on feed report.
And Joe, from a market perspective, if screwworm were to cross the border and end up here in the United States, what would that do to the marketplace? Will we see immediate downturn?
I think immediately you have this knee-jerk negative that spooks speculators for one out of their positions. We had a taste of that on Friday with this news. But long-term, you could see the market stabilize and then even eventually rally on this idea that here we go with another major supply constraint in a market that's already, of course, very historically tight on that cattle inventory look. So that's another thing we've got at the end of this month, the cattle inventory report, a semi-annual update. So we'll have an idea about those numbers, whether or not we're starting to gain some traction on the herd rebuilding effort. But immediately you got to think that's a headline negative that could then turn into something different if it further reduces the bullish tight cattle supply situation.
What's happening with the hog side?
Hogs, new highs, new contract highs last week, and following through just a touch this week. There's bullishness surrounding the seasonal view for what should be a considerable enough reduction in production overall. And then still seeing on this side of the holidays, the demand end of it lean more friendly for pork, that consumers are maybe foregoing some of the top beef cuts and finding a deal in the pork chops, pork roasts. These colder temperatures so far have done well for consumer demand on pork, and that's a bullish storyline right now for the hog futures.
At the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, we deliver ag-focused content designed to complement your local radio station. From market updates to the latest ag news, our trusted farm broadcasters bring you the information you need while your local station keeps you connected to the heart of your community. And just like your local station, our broadcast team is Iowa-based, so we have feet on the ground across the state. Together, we're stronger for Iowa's farmers. This message from your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.
Riley Smith always enjoys getting in touch with the folks at Practical Farmers of Iowa, and this time he learns more about prairie strips from one of the members of PFI. Here's Riley with more.
Riley Smith, Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, here right now with Tim Youngquist. He's board member of the Practical Farmers of Iowa. Tim, we're talking today about prairie stripping and the benefits available from that. First off, what is your experience with prairie stripping and how you use that on your farm?
I'm a farmer in western Iowa, so in Sac County, and I've installed prairie strips on my own farm on our most environmentally sensitive and then our least productive acres. And also my off-farm job is with the agronomy department at Iowa State University, where my job is to move around the state helping farmers and landowners get connected with areas of their farms that they could put in prairie strips.
So with those prairie strips, how does that get implemented into a field, first off?
Yeah. So one of the neat things about prairie strips is how flexible it is. You can install it around the outside of the field. You can install it through the field. Really the flexibility is key, and you can target areas that are either lower producing. You can target areas where water is moving through either onto the field or off of the field. If you have an area, again, that's lower producing or something that's steep or just not as farmable. And not only can you put prairie strips out there, but through your local USDA service center, really anywhere in the country, you can go down there and say, hey, I'm interested in prairie strips. It's what's called CP43, and it's available as part of the CRP or Conservation Preserve program. So there's technical support and there's cost share available for farmers to put in prairie strips.
And of course, we know with those prairie strips, there's a lot of benefits for like water and nutrient runoff, keeping that in there, but it's also great for a bit of habitat as well, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the two main focuses with prairie strips were holding soil in place and then filtering water as it leaves the property. So it depends on what your goals are and how you situate those strips, but really anywhere that you would put prairie. And again, this would be in your backyard, in your front yard, on an 80-acre field, wherever it would be, you will really quickly begin to see benefits to, soil microbial community, but then a lot of neat above ground stuff where you'll have grassland birds, things like pheasants, songbirds, pollinators. With our research that we've started almost 20 years ago at Iowa State, we found that you double the abundance of birds and you triple the abundance of pollinators. So kind of a neat thing that you get from this conservation practices that you don't get from a lot of the other ones.
So when it comes to those prairie strips, I know that there's kind of a bit of a tactical way of having the distance from the field itself. I believe with certain pollinators, is it that you have to have a certain amount of distance between like farming practices and them if they're protected and they end up in that area?
Yeah. So one of the neat things, there's a lot of concern that you are putting things like monarchs out into areas where maybe there's insecticide being applied or they're going to be adverse conditions, that they're going to be somehow affected. And the neat thing at Iowa State is we're finding that the data just does not support that. So what a neat thing is that from a production standpoint, you can have your corn and soybeans, but then immediately next to that, you can have your prairie, this diverse mix of flowers and grasses that is actually increasing the production of something like monarchs or these other pollinators. So you don't really need a buffer space. You do need to be mindful, as you're applying insecticides or herbicides, try to watch the wind direction, follow the label on the herbicide. But for the most part, those species are affected by the application of herbicide and insecticide, but at very low non-lethal levels.
All right, Tim, lots of great information today. Is there anything else when it comes to the kind of implementing prairie strips that you think producers should be kind of aware of today?
Yeah, absolutely. So prairie was the dominant ground cover here for thousands of years prior to farming. And I think, here at our farm, my wife can have cut flowers on our table from basically April to September. From a quality of life standpoint, going out, looking at the birds, things like that, my young kids looking at flowers, those kind of things. Not only is it good to keep soil in place and protect the water, but you get all these quality of life benefits on top of that make farming more enjoyable and make living in a rural area more enjoyable.
And Tim, if anyone wants to learn more online about prairie strips, how can they do that?
Yep. So you could just Google or use your whatever preferred search engine, search Prairie Strips Iowa State, or you can go to prairiestrips.org and you can find Iowa State information, or reach out to your local USDA service center, which would be in your county seat town, wherever you are located.
All right, Tim, thanks again for the information. Enjoy the rest of the annual conference.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, this is Dustin Huffman, Content Director at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, inviting you to the 2026 Iowa Pork Congress, January 21st and 22nd in Des Moines. This is the pork industry's largest winter gathering, bringing together thousands of pork producers and industry professionals from across the Midwest and beyond. Explore 200-plus exhibitors, gain insights from industry-leading speakers, and connect with the people shaping the future of pork production. Don't miss 2 days of education, innovation, and networking at the Iowa Event Center. Register today at iowaporkcongress.org. That's iowaporkcongress.org. Well, that's going to put the wraps on another episode of Iowa Ag Matters. Of course, you can find all our content, full replays of the program, all available online at iowaagnet.com. Don't forget to sign up for the free daily e-newsletter also that we send out at 5 p.m. every day. Thanks to Mark, thanks to Riley, and of course, thanks to you for listening. Try to keep warm out there as we hopefully see some temps in the double digits. You're listening to the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Have a good day.